So the chairperson, Kalima, was not able to attend tonight, so I'm filling in her place. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Rebecca Carabez. Present. Michael Fisher.
Present.
Alexis Lewis.
Present.
William Mickler.
Here.
Shirley Melnico.
Present.
Rob Solano.
Here.
And James Simmons.
Here.
Thank you.
And before we start, I normally don't wear a hat at a meeting like this, but I've had a procedure, which is why I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, and it's still kind of healing, and I have a bandage on my head, so I'm wearing a hat to cover it up, so you don't have to look at it.
I kind of like the hat.
Yeah. The Rogue River.
Road River?
Yeah. So then the first general public comment.
We will now move to item number 2, general public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the Independent Civilian Advisory Commission on a topic within the jurisdiction of the commission, but that is not on the agenda. Public comments on matters on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. Please fill a speaker slip. For those of you joining online, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. The commission may not discuss or take action on items not on the agenda. We have 5 speaker slips. I'd like to call Jose Reyes to the podium. You'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak. Let me set this up real quick because I have 2 minutes, right? That's my dog Prince. We are here on behalf of an assault. It says protect and serve. 5 years ago, I became permanently disabled 7 years ago. 3 months prior to getting beat by the San Mateo County Sheriffs that hogtied me behind my back and beat me and carried me through the intake in the jail. And on a case where there's no charges. It took me 5 days to bail out. After I bailed, it took 5 days to get out. To not be allowed to go to court, to not be allowed a police report, to catch 11 cases since the beating, since I made noise on it. Retaliation, Sheriff Christina Corpus spoke of the sergeants retaliating and abuse and all of this. And they called the Attorney General and the FBI to investigate a sheriff against the sheriff departments. But this board and council was created for the people. I was beat by these sheriffs, and the crime hindered and tried to bury it because I was made homeless, not by choice or drugs. I was made homeless because I fell 10 feet on a union job and got spinal damage, had hip surgeries, need shoulder surgeries. I can't stop shaking. Only the right hand, if you notice. 3 months after that fall, they beat me. They hogtied me like this. The only difference is they caught this on film. The difference is $100 million in payouts for abuse. Racial injustice. My lawyers, they tried to send me away for 25 to life, then to 11 years, then 11 months. If I plead guilty, they'll allow me to go see my mother who's dying. If I plead guilty. We'll let you out to see your mom for 40 days if you plead guilty. So I'm asking the board, I have all these notes that I have here. These are notes while I was in custody of sergeants telling me my complaints are ungrievanceable. I have complaint after complaint. This gentleman here,
So
after 40
your
years,
time
I
is,
see it.
yeah, thank you.
After 40 years in prison over lies and perjury, they released them. That's the bomber. And then the lawyers, they're not doing their job. So I'm asking, I've been speaking out everywhere. I'm asking you guys, the exact same thing they do for the Sheriff's Department, to call the FBI and the Attorney General to investigate that crime, I'm asking you, I'm pleading to you, to invoke that power of the Attorney General to investigate my crime, who this board and that Attorney General was created for. So I'm asking, don't allow them to continue to abuse me, try to lock me up to hinder that crime. They said, I got a letter from Sergeant Fava
Okay,
that said,
your
Sergeant Fava
time,
said-
your time is really
All right.
up. Okay,
Sergeant Fava
thank you.
said that they investigated the case, they only kept the film for a year. I never even met Sergeant Fava. And they wrote it on a handwritten piece of paper. So I'm asking for an investigation. Thank you, sorry for going so long, but you guys will hear from me every single meeting. So I'm pleading. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking.
Okay, thank you. We'll have Deacon Lauren McCombs come up to the podium, followed by Jim Lawrence.
My name is Deacon Lauren McCombs, and I am currently serving at Christ Episcopal Church in Portola Valley and Woodside. I'm a member of Peninsula Solidarity Cohort and also Fixing San Mateo. Today is Ash Wednesday and is the beginning of 40 days of Lent before Easter. During Lent, one asks forgiveness of past transgressions and the promise of God's unconditional love through prayer. In 2023, a former jail chaplain who stopped by our Fixing San Mateo County booth at Hometown Days told us that there was limited availability of clergy and chaplains being able to visit our inmates. Not allowing religious services for the incarcerated in our county jails is a direct violation of the U.S. Constitution and their rights of religious freedom. As ordained clergy, to deny inmates the opportunity to practice their faith at a time when they so desperately need to connect to their faith is deplorable. Offering hope to our inmates is needed during a time when they feel isolated from their families. Chaplains visiting with them, offering compassion, can give them a glimmer of hope for their future. In addition, it should be noted that printed materials that used to be provided by clergy and chaplains is no longer available in our jails. Currently, Bibles can only be obtained and an inmate makes the request through a tablet in a group setting. So in other words, they could not have a Bible. Simple prayer cards also are not allowed. This is not allowed. And so with the landslide passage of Measure A, we are at a crossroads as it is time for a new sheriff's leadership that offers compassion and hope for all. As clergy, I implore ICAC to evaluate why our jails in San Mateo County are not like those in neighboring San Francisco and Santa Clara counties that allow clergy and chaplains to visit their inmates as well as to provide Bibles and materials. The time to act is now. Thank you. Sorry I went over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Lawrence, followed by Nancy Goodman.
Good evening. Jim Lawrence, Fixing San Mateo County. We live in some historic times with a significant number of us who voted to begin this process of removing an elected official. I want to take a moment just to acknowledge the gravity of this decision. I do not take it lightly, and I'm sure you do not also. That said, I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and all of you for stepping up to the Citizens Advisory Commission, to the Board of Supervisors. You have a voice, and you are playing an essential role in holding our San Mateo County Sheriff's Office to the highest professional standards. You are the community's guardrails, in effect, ensuring that transparency and integrity remains in our governmental systems. I just want to thank you for your commitment and all that you do. It does not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy Goodman, followed by David Vallerga.
I'm Nancy Goodman. I live in Redwood City, and I'm with Fix in San Mateo County. And like Deacon Lauren, I wanted to bring up an ongoing issue about the lack of adequate access to religious services in the jail. We did hear, as she said, from a community member last year in San Carlos Hometown Days, and we also heard from someone as recently as this week. My understanding is that religious visitors, chaplains, and volunteers can come on 2 days of the week, Friday for 2 hours or Sunday for 2 hours. And if it's understaffed, since they need to be escorted by a deputy, they are turned away. As a Unitarian Universalist, which is my faith, we have a pen pal program with UU members of our faith who are incarcerated all around the country. And before the pandemic, we used to write cards to people all over the country. And it occurs to me, I can't even write a card to people in my own faith, in my own jail. And it's distressing to know that on top of that, religious services have been so limited since the pandemic. They used to be able to go in unescorted before the pandemic, and now they need to be escorted by a deputy. So it really depends on staffing availability, as well as the time has become much more limited, just at 4 hours a week. So we're hopeful that our current sheriff or a new sheriff can really send out some kind of a statement, a memo, that they have a constitutional right to have access to the, religious services if they would like it, of their own faith, and make that a policy and really push that down. And we're hoping that ICAC can do some investigation of your own and find out exactly what they're doing, and if there's some way that we can improve that and better abide by the Constitution in that regard. Thank you so much. Easter's coming, as Lauren said, and it's an important holiday for all Christians, but there are other holidays too for all the other religions. We're right now in Ramadan. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker would be David Vallerga, and we'll move on to Zoom's comments.
Thank you. I'm David Valerga, and I just want to express my appreciation to all of you for the hard work you have done in being part of this commission. Since you accepted the task, the ground has shifted repeatedly. I mean, it's almost like there's an earthquake every week. And I just admire you for everything you've done to get this underway and to take this task very seriously. By now, it should be blindingly obvious that we need to have an Inspector General, preferably with subpoena power. You need an Inspector General, a permanent Inspector General, to help you get the information you need to make good recommendations to the board. The board needs a permanent Inspector General in order to conclude their task or to continue their task that they have overtaken for oversight. The public needs a permanent Inspector General so that the public can get the information that it needs to have the transparency that everybody talks about, but nobody actually delivers. And the deputies need a permanent Inspector General because they need to have a place to go outside of their union, because the union, much as it tries, can't protect against everything. So I strongly recommend this in your recommendation to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Zoom comments. We have one raised hand. Bill Newell, you may begin when you're ready.
Good evening, commission members, committee members. I too want to thank you for all the hard work you've done up to this point and will continue to do going forward. I think there's 2 points I want to make. Number one, as it's already been stated, the urgency for Inspector General is greater now, more now than ever. 3-4 years ago, when we first started working on this issue from citizen oversight of the Sheriff's Office, we were talking about the need for Inspector General back then. So it's been a long-standing issue. It's gone through a lot of community scrutiny, a lot of dialogue, And we know we're at a point now where it's going to be very important for your committee going forward to be more effective, just as been noted by previous speakers. The other point that I want to make tonight that I don't want to get lost is that it looks likely that there'll be a process coming up for filling a new sheriff in our county. And I just want to reiterate and support Kalima Sudaha's, sorry if I mispronounced that, her statement at your last meeting about the need for a process that's accountable and transparent, similar to a model that she suggested coming out of her experience with the South San Francisco School Board. And that's a process whereby the county board needs to make it public and an opportunity for the community to have a voice and a clear understanding from the county board of just how that process and final decision is arrived at. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more raised hand. Noble Truth Seeker, you may begin when you're ready. Noble Truth Seeker, you may begin when you're ready. Okay, we can move on.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3. There are 2 items on the agenda, items 5 and 6. The Deputy Sheriff's Association, I guess, notified the staff today that they would not be here would not be able to be here this evening, or chose not to be, not sure. And secondly, Kalima was going to do the it's items 5 and 7, not 5 and 6. Kalima was going to present I'm going to get to that. I'm saying the agenda is being modified. So item 7, I think, was Kalima's item, and she's not here to present that. So I would ask that we approve the agenda with the deletion of items 5 and 7. Do we have? Moved. Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
You're removing 7. Can't we go ahead and vote on that to move forward with that? The recommendations?
We don't have the final recommendations. They were going to be presented by Kalima at this meeting.
I thought she presented them at the last meeting.
She presented at the last meeting a version, and then she was to take it back and work on it for a final version. And we don't actually have the final version. The pushing it 1 month is probably not harmful, because the board will have a month before they certify any election results, and then there'll be an additional process before there's really any consideration of what would happen upon the sheriff's removal, if the sheriff is removed pursuant to a process.
All right.
Yeah, so I should have said that item would be continued to the next meeting.
Okay.
And the deputy sheriff's kind of TBD, I guess.
Okay.
So with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. So item 4 is motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 5th.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mike. All those in favor say aye.
Can we
Aye.
have one correction first?
Certainly, yeah.
Just Michael's name. spell it with an E. Michael Fisher.
Was
Just a typo.
misspelled? Yeah, let's correct the spelling of his name.
Was it?
Bill, we do have to take public comment for
Oh,
minutes.
sorry.
Before
Thank
the
you.
motion. Oh, sorry, whose name was misspelled?
What's that? Michael.
Oh,
Michael.
okay, thank you.
So any public comment on the motion to approve the meeting minutes?
We do have one raised hand. Give me one moment to put the timer up. Okay, we do have Bill Newell. Please begin when you're ready.
My comment on the minutes are that, I was hoping I could, find a copy of those, online, as an attachment to the agenda, but I didn't see it anywhere. I would just urge that, minutes of meetings, unless I'm missing them somehow, should really be made available, to the public so that they can see what transpired from the meeting, each month. And I think that significant, I don't know if they were decisions, but discussions and activities from the last meeting, were rather substantive, and it would be good to just have those available for people to look at and see, and maybe be a little bit better informed about the meeting previously, in order to make a more responsible comment to the minutes from the previous meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the meeting minutes were with the agenda. They're not actually an attachment, they're separate, or is it linked in the agenda? How are they accessible by the public?
Let's have the clerk and staff just quickly take a look. I think the intent is to include them, so to the extent they weren't included, that would have been an oversight, but we can pull it up real quick and see if they're attached.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they linked in the agenda for someone, or are they just listed?
It's listed under the attachment, the supporting material.
Right, so they are there. If you go to the agenda, then you can find the minutes and any other supporting material that's coming to the commission before the meeting, and that's posted on the Friday before the meeting.
Correct.
Yeah. So any other public comment on the minutes? Or any other corrections? So can you make your motion to approve the minutes as corrected, please?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes unanimously. So then we will, we're passing on item 5. Item 6, I think Tara.
So, okay, so speaking of corrections, what I'm going to talk about now is to correct the presentation that I gave at the last meeting, and now I am going to direct your attention to the county charter, where this question is answered succinctly. So the question was just informational. What happens in the event of a vacancy in the position of the sheriff? So this is meant to replace last month's presentation. As Adam alluded to before, I think the vote is expected to be certified on April 3rd. So this is what happens on the effective date and after the effective date of the vacancy. So we're talking about something that's about a month away.
And that would obviously, this would take effect, sorry to jump in.
No, after a vote.
Yeah, this would take effect following a process that the Board of Supervisors would undertake that includes, and you're probably going to go over this, I apologize.
Okay. No.
The presentation of charges to the sheriff and a process that gives her an opportunity to respond to any allegations that are made there. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tara.
No, I was not going to go over that. So this is if there is a vacancy, if there is a 4/5 vote of the board following that process, and there is a vacancy in the office of the sheriff, what happens? So within 30 days of the effective day of the vacancy, the board must act in one of two ways. Either appoint someone to take the position, and that person would serve until January 2029, or make an or order the calling of a special election to fill the vacancy. So within 30 days of the vacancy, if that happens, the board must act. If the board fails to either make an appointment or order the calling of a special election, the chief elections officer of the county must immediately order a special election to fill the vacancy. So either within 30 days, the board will make an appointment, or a special election will be ordered. So pursuant to California law, in the short term, the position will be filled, this is unchanged from last time, the position of sheriff would be filled by either, prior to it being filled by appointment or special election, the duties would be discharged by the undersheriff temporarily, or if that position also became vacant, by the assistant sheriff or next in order. So after assistant sheriff, you'd go down to the captain level. If the board acted to appoint someone within 30 days, made the first choice, that appointee would be in office for the remainder of the sheriff's current term, which is until the election in 2028, so serving until January 2029, when the person who won the next regular sheriff's election would be sworn in. The timing on the special election, if that's what the board chose to do, it's kind of random amount of days, but this is what the charter says. The special election shall be held not less than 102 days nor more than 131 days from the order calling the election, except if there's a regular election date that falls within 270 days of the order, the election to replace the sheriff could be held within that time, or on that election day within 270 days. In the case of a special election, the candidate receiving the highest number of votes is elected for the remainder of the term. And for your reference, if you want to see the county charter, I believe it's section 415 of the county charter.
So when is the next general or regular election after, well, when's the next general election?
Well, there's a gubernatorial election in November of 2026. I started to look this up, but then I decided maybe I should just give you like what the law is.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's perfect, but then
Yeah.
my brain is going, okay, so when's the next general election? My guess is there's not gonna be a general election within 270 days, no matter when they act.
But you
unless
don't know when.
When the board acts to
Correct,
remove
right.
and create a vacancy.
You don't know when that hearing will be, and you don't know when they'll
Right.
vote. Nobody knows.
Right, but is there a primary in June of 2026, which that would also be a general election? There must be, if there's,
They're probably, I'll look it up.
yeah. So that it could, depending on how long they take,
June 2nd, 2026.
yeah. So that would be the
Or is
nearest.
the primary.
Yeah, that would be the nearest general election. Okay. Other questions about the presentation or the process?
Yep.
Shirley?
I'd like to know the process to get to vacancy, time-wise.
This is sort of what I think Adam was alluding to. Okay, so you have the vote that happened yesterday. You have the elections department is expected to certify the vote on April 3rd. Okay. Then after that, the board is going to have to figure out, and I don't know the answer to these questions, but the board is going to have to figure out what process they're going to use and what kind of timeline. The sheriff is entitled to notice and an opportunity to be heard. And today, the board, Supervisor Mueller and Supervisor Corzo indicated that they would give the sheriff, they expect to give the sheriff the opportunity to be heard both in writing and in person at the hearing. More than that, I don't know. And I think it's to be determined.
Yeah, I can jump in and I can read a statement that Supervisor Corzo and Supervisor Mueller put out today, if that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I'm going to start with Supervisor Corzo's statement, which covers more directly this question. although, specifics are still to be determined. This is from Supervisor Corzo. Given our commitment to transparency, we want residents to understand next steps and the timeline for the charter amendment to go into effect. First, state election law requires the county elections office to certify the election results before the charter amendment process can begin. The certification should be completed within 30 days. Second, the Board of Supervisors will need to then approve the election results. The charter amendment will become effective 10 days after approval. So that's a minimum of 40 days. Soon after, county staff will seek direction from the Board of Supervisors in a public meeting regarding procedures that will be used to conduct a removal hearing. Prior to a removal hearing, the sheriff will be served with a written statement of grounds for removal. The sheriff will then be given a reasonable opportunity, both in writing and in person, prior to and during the hearing, to be heard regarding any explanation or defense. Supervisor Corzo goes on to state, we are mindful of the serious responsibility that the voters of San Mateo County have decisively entrusted the Board of Supervisors with. We deeply value the Sheriff's Office and the important role it plays in ensuring public safety in our county. And there's additional information there. And so I think that's the most information that is currently available about what the process would be, how the determination of the process will occur, and rough timelines. And then I see Supervisor Corzo's very able aide, Jackie Rigoni, raising her hand in the background, and I leave it to the chair to recognize her.
Please, we'd love to hear from you.
I just wanted to add that statement.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to add that statement in its entirety, including Supervisor Mueller's statements, are found at the smcgov.org. If you go to the main homepage, you can scroll down to where it says latest news, and it's linked as the very first item for the complete statement.
Thank you. Rob, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Under Government Code 24004.3, it requires that a sheriff have certain qualifications to even run for sheriff. And what I was asking about is if it becomes an appointment through the Board of Supervisors with open transparency, is it going to follow that government code section as if someone would be actually running for sheriff?
Did you say 24007.3?
24004.3.
And I think we should take a close look at that section and then come back to you next month or with a direct response. I don't want to necessarily do it on the fly for fear that there may be something, elsewhere in a charter or something that may dictate this, or there may be gloss from case law on that code. So I know that's very lawyerly, but I just want to be very cautious.
Well, then that would be something that I think we should look into.
No problem.
That has specific requirements for the position.
Will do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would just note that was actually in the February 5th meeting minutes. There was a commissioner inquiry research if the county has special requirements in the job description for the sheriff outside of what's required by state law. So both what's required by state law, and then are there additional requirements, training, education, experience, etc. And I think that would probably be a good idea if we could maybe have that on our next meeting agenda as well.
You got it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Other questions about this item? Okay, is there any public comment?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Could you go back to the previous slide? Okay, so, okay. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the time frame of all of this stuff, right? Because
I think could be easier to make an appointment, right? You have a little bit more authority in that. But when it comes to the special election part, who's to say that there are candidates that are going to run, right? And I'm trying to figure out, like, how long does it take to get a campaign going and all of that type of stuff. So how is that determination really made of which way to go?
I can't answer that question. I think that's more of a political question for the board. I don't know if Adam wants to comment on that, but either choice is available to them legally. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, the first one's
if they were to pick two and no one were to
straightforward.
run, like, what would happen?
I don't think that's, yeah, I don't think that's ever happened.
I'm
yeah.
asking a question.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, there's a first time for everything.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, look at the times we're living in, it's like
Yeah.
crazy, so
Yeah, we can look into that.
I'm just curious.
We can look into that, but I agree with Tara that the decision on whether it's going to be an appointment or a special election is squarely within the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. And they'll have to contemplate whether or not they're concerned that nobody's going to run, or, who's going to run, and the uncertainty around there, if there is any.
Just
And
curious.
typically, the Board of Supervisors, I'm sure, will have a hearing and have a conversation and invite the public to weigh in on whether the board should appoint or call for a special election. I mean, that's typically a very somewhat controversial. Some people think it should always be an election because it's an elected office. Some people say, don't waste the money and the time. Let's just appoint somebody that's good and let them fill the vacancy. But that's going to be the kind of political debate as to which procedure to follow. So any other questions from the commission? If not, are there any public comments on this item?
Members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item 6, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or bring a speaker slip up to the clerk during this time. You will have 2 minutes to speak. We do not have any speaker slips, but we do have one raised hand on Zoom. 1 moment, please. Eric Sapp, please begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Eric Sapp, speaking in my individual capacity, resident of Redwood City. So I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that the adoption of Measure A and the application of Measure A are two separate things. And though a court has refused to stop the election from taking place, the court did not rule that the measure was ultimately sound, and did not rule, of course, that it could be applied, especially retroactively to behavior allegedly done by a sheriff prior to the adoption of that measure. I think there's serious legal questions about the legitimacy of that as a kind of evasion of existing state laws governing recall, removal, and vacancy procedures under California state statutes. I think it's also of dubious constitutional validity under the state constitution. And I think it's an affront to the concept of democracy for a one government body to essentially remove an elected official under rules of the game that did not exist at the time that the electorate elected that official. Whether or not Corpus and her legal team is up to raising that challenge remains to be seen. I think members of the public would have taxpayer standing should any interested persons interested in having the laws of their county, having the government of their county conform to legal obligations and constitutional validity, would be have standing under the Santa Clara precedent. So I think we shouldn't count our chickens before it's hatched, and we should ask the board to consider the legitimacy of applying Measure A retroactively. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay, so there's no action. This is not an action item, so we can move on then to item 8, motion to the mission statement. So the mission statement has been presented. It was included in the materials for the meeting. Attached, and the proposed mission statement reads, for the Independent Civilian Advisory Commission on the Sheriff's Office. The mission of the Independent Civilian Advisory Commission on the Sheriff's Office is to provide recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding the Sheriff's Office to enhance public confidence and foster mutual respect and trust internally and externally. We recommend policies, programs, and practices that reflect community needs to uphold accountability, transparency, and justice. Are there comments or questions from the commission before we hear from the public? If not, do we have any public comment?
There are no public comments.
Oh, we have a hand up?
Can you fill out a speaker sub? But, yes, you'll have, okay, Jose Reyes, you can come up to the podium. You have 2 minutes.
Comment on that briefly. I know I spoke on this issue earlier, but accountability is very important. To be able to access the telephones and the cell phones of these sheriffs that beat me is important to the public. To be able to access what in other cities was used to bring justice, we should have it here too. This is the only county that the accountability and oversight and everything is not being used. So I'm asking that we really think about applying that in our county, because it's very important, because on cases like mine, where it's getting hidden under a rug and prolonged and delayed, the public doesn't know about this. And it should be knowing that an individual is bringing it to the board, to the county, to the board meetings, and it's not being put out there so that the public can say, hey, what's going on with that investigation? You know, instead of allowing things to be hindered, we need accountability. So I just hope that they really do whatever it takes to bring accountability to our county, because it would make our county so much better, because we have a beautiful county. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the proposed mission statement?
There are no public comments.
Okay. Any other comments from commission before making a motion? Nope. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, please?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Shirley, and others who worked on this mission statement. It's much appreciated. Let's see, the next item is Commissioner and Liaison announcements. Do we have any announcements from commissioners? Do we have any announcements from liaisons? No. Do we have any announcements from any of the staff that behind me? Okay, perfect, thank you. So then I guess it would be a motion, Adam.
I have a brief report back from the last meeting.
Oh, great, thank you.
And then I'll address one other issue really quickly, if that's okay. So there was a question that I think Commissioner Lewis raised about how to respond to inquiries from the public who are under the impression that this body is one that takes and investigates individual complaints or employee complaints. And the request was to provide some language that could be used to convey that to the public in response. I'm stealing from Tara, who wrote the language, but she did come up with some language which I can share with the council members independently, but I'll just read it really quickly. And this could be included as a tagline at the signature related to your ICAC commissionership, which indicates that the Independent Civilian Advisory Commission does not investigate individual complaints, to report complaints or concerns related to the sheriff's office. And then it's bullets. Civilian complaints, please contact Sheriff's Professional Standards Bureau at the number. County employee complaints, call Professional Standards Bureau at the number or the whistleblower hotline. And then it provides information on how to file a government claim in the event that the citizen who is concerned or the resident who is concerned would like to file a claim with the government. This is not to say that this is the only action that would be taken by you. You can certainly report out in your comments through this body that you've received 5 complaints about some particular issue that you've heard, or a single individual issue that you've heard. It's just to give you some language and some correct phone numbers to refer people to in order to have these looked into. And so I can share this language, and to the extent particular commissioners want to modify it slightly or tinker with it, we're available to help with that as well.
Thank you. That would be appreciated if you would send it out to the commissioners.
Great. And then the only other thing I did want to respond to, just quite briefly, is that there was some public comment on the availability of religious services in the jail. I'm one of the board members for the Service League, so I just happen to have some information about that and that there is some availability, although it is limited by staffing. And I see we have Captain Allen here. We may ask for the next hearing, if it's of interest to the commissioners, to have Captain Fogarty, who oversees the jails, come and talk about religious services. So that's something that we'll discuss in our agenda setting process with you and with Kalima.
Okay, great. Anything else for the good? Yes, sure.
I have a question, and I just would like to know on the inspector generals that you're hiring ad hoc for the county, do they have subpoena power?
No, the subpoena power will, the Board of Supervisors considered that issue and determined that they would be the ones that hold the subpoena power. So in the event that an inspector general is contracted and would like to issue a subpoena, that would be brought to the Board of Supervisors, who would decide whether or not the subpoena should issue.
So the decision to make a subpoena would be made in a public meeting?
I'm not sure if it would be a public meeting or a closed session, but it could be at a public meeting.
Well, closed session is litigation related, and I don't think that qualifies for a closed session.
Yeah. I mean, the subpoena power is something that the board has currently, and I'm just not sure that it's actually used that subpoena power in any recent instance, but it would either be at a public meeting or at a closed session.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that if an inspector general said, I would request subpoena power without being specific, could come to the board could grant the subpoena power without being specific as to the situation.
My gut reaction is that that's a closed session item.
You think it could be?
Yeah, because I would think that, like, I don't know.
Yeah. No.
But my gut reaction is that person needs to be able to conduct their investigation in the way that they see fit without making public what all their next moves are going to be or what information they're going to seek. So that's what I would think, but I could look into that.
Yeah, I don't know that we need it. All we know is that the inspector generals don't have the subpoena power now, and they would have to request it or get approval of specific subpoenas or dispensation to issue them, I guess.
Yeah, and
from the board.
This was a topic of heavy conversation and deliberation, and the board was pretty definitive that they wanted to hold the subpoena power.
Any other questions or comments or Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
A second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.